Warning. The following program may contain content unsuitable for all audiences. This content may include, but is not limited to, strong language or depictions of violence, sex, substance abuse, or, God forbid, the occult. Parents, you have been warned. And children, now you know this episode contains the good stuff. Now, on to the show.
From the riot-torn streets of Manchester, England. All right, to the scenic shores of Chicago. Are you ready?
I'm sorry, homie. We don't do no happy songs.
I don't know how to tell you this, but
That's right, this is Tapes You Leave Behind. I'm your host, Brian, joined with Emerald.
That's me.
And we are starting on History You Listen To, Part 2.
Part those.
That's right. We're back, and this time, as I promised last time, less murder.
Less murder. Not no murder?
No, not no murder. I tried.
Oh
I tried.
God.
And then as I went through it, I was like, well, there's at least one for sure.
Okay.
And then one maybe.
Maybe.
And then another one that it depends it depends what your definition of murder is. As I said last time, it makes up a lot of history. It's a lot less objectively. I think there was a lot more in the Waco one of part 1.
3 is still like.
We'll see. As I said, it's a little different. It's a little different this time, so you know. But I can guarantee you, first one, no murder.
Okay.
Songs about murder, maybe.
Sure.
But no murder. So we're getting meta. Songs about songs. And if you didn't catch that warning at the beginning of the episode, a bit of parental advisory with this one. We're getting a little crazy. We're starting off with the Ramones off their 1992 album Mondo Bizarro, the song Censorshit.
What's that sticker sticking on my CD? Is that some kind of warning to protect me? Freedom of choice needs a stronger voice. You can't step at the source, but you can stop creative thoughts.
And that was the Ramones Censorshit, spelled with a $sign. If you're going to look that one up on your own, I'm sure it'll pop up. Spelled correctly as well. Any first impressions, Emerald?
That sticker, man.
That sticker, exactly. If he wasn't a parental lyrics, which again, you know, not the easiest lead vocalist to understand in the world. Joey Ramone
Put
there.
him in the middle.
The middle?
Yeah.
But if you're listening to this podcast, odds are you've encountered a CD in your life. And more than likely, you've probably seen it sitting on the front of it, of at least one or two of yours. A parental advisory, explicit content warning.
Yeah. Explicit content indeed.
As the Ramones asked there, Tipper, what's that sticker sitting on my CD? Who is Tipper?
I don't know.
Tipper Gore.
I don't
Wife
know.
of Al Gore,
Oh,
future Vice
got
President of the United States of America. But this story takes place before that, back when he was in the Senate. That sounds right.
Yeah, sure. He was supposed to be president.
that's a different one. We'll get that's a different song. But Tipper Gore, along with 3 other wives of politicians.
Wait, Tipper?
Yeah.
Why is that her name?
I think it's a nickname. I don't think it's her actual first name is Tipper.
Oh, okay.
His name she goes by. Founded something that would be called the Parents Music Resource Center, or the PMRC, with the goal to be, an organization that keeps track of music and anything they deem explicit, to help warn parents and keep their children safe from the dangers inside of those CDs.
I have a lot of questions, but I will wait.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so I never really thought about the fact that it says parental advisory specifically. Specifically, meaning that it's literally parents that are reviewing this. Are they funded by the government? Because I always associated
They're
with
not funded by the government. No, this is a totally separate organization.
That's bizarre.
But they do have some big funding. That's interesting you bring that up, including Joseph Coors of Coors Beer.
Coors Light.
Yep. And Mike Love of the Beach Boys. Proving
Oh,
once again how unfun he is.
that's horrible.
But as I said, the goal was effectively a parental organization of these 4 political wives to create and force on the record industry a system to label their albums akin to kind of what movies have.
Okay.
One of the founders, Susan Baker, said that she was striven to do this when her 7-year-old daughter came up to her and said, "Like a virgin. Mama, what's a virgin?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, Madonna sings this song, Like a Virgin, touched for the very first time. What's a virgin?" I was speechless, she said. Here she was, still playing with dolls at 7. Personally, I have some doubts about how real the story is. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But interestingly, Tipper Gore has the exact same story except with Purple Rain.
Wow. Same story, huh?
Yeah.
7-year-old playing with dolls. I find that I kind of get that with obviously the Madonna song is pretty
Ubiquitous.
pretty
Very,
suggestive.
very
let's say.
directly suggestive.
But at the same time, it's pretty easy to explain, I think, personally, without ruining the innocence of the youth or whatever their moral excuses.
Agreed, because there's a big Christian component to the PMRC as we go
I'm
through
shocked.
it. And I do find it awkward that she's like a virgin. Don't talk about that, but that's also a big part of Christianity, like the Virgin Mary. I feel like it'd be easy to deflect that one. The stuff in Purple Rain in that album maybe a little less so, but we'll get to that. We'll get to Purple Rain later. So the MRC was effectively, as I said, a non-government entity. So they went to work, reached into their contacts. They even listed themselves into their Christmas card list. Started shooting off letters to different people inside of the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA.
Yeah.
Which is the big association of like all the record labels, like the
They make
major
the,
record
like,
labels.
Platinum and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
And they effectively sent out a letter that said, "Dear record labels, quote, please consider creating a rating system of some variety akin to what movies have and start labeling your content." They asked for 3 specific types. They wanted a lettering system. They wanted a V if there was violent content in the lyrics, an O if there was occult or anti-Christian components to it, and a D/A for any song that mentioned drugs or alcohol.
Okay. So bringing it back to the movies standpoint, movies are only rated when they're released, right? Like,
right. They have a board. They sit there. They watch it. They make a rather large list of everything that they deem to fall into one of the categories, and then they have a whole bunch of like phrases that fill out. Like while they have like G, PG, there is another box to the side of it that tells you effectively these kinds of things.
But people can like make a movie and not send it to that board, correct?
Yes. You're not going to be able to get distribution in a lot of places. Like most movie theaters won't show it, but
right. But you can still release it.
Yeah.
I guess technically.
Yeah.
With music, I feel like it's a bit more complicated because there's just so much music being released all the time that I could see this being, I mean, for one, a form of censorship, which is just not fun.
As the Ramones saw it and
Right.
named it. Yes.
Yeah. But also, like, logistically difficult to all of a sudden have to review every piece of music that comes out. It's just very interesting that this was something they wanted to do.
Well, as I said, they were very concerned about the corruption of the youth. This is the mid-'80s, the peak of satanic panic.
Yeah.
Hence why occult is one of the 3 classifications
Right.
on the records. But you're kind of right, actually, about it being very difficult. Because the RCA was effectively like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And they started putting some on stuff. But much to the dismay of, the members, they weren't pleased with this sort of ununiform listing. Like some just didn't have stuff.
Right.
There were different styles and sizes that would appear on albums.
Right.
Or
like how do you like determine whether something is like truly violent. or
Right.
not.
Yeah. I mean, who gets to say? And at that
Right.
point, it's whoever feels like it.
Yeah.
But that also wasn't enough. So in addition to them not feeling they weren't getting enough out of just the base version of these stickers that were once again just by the record label, they presented a new plan, which was to not only add that, they would like anything that falls under these to also not appear on the radio or MTV, and preferably not be sold in stores.
That's so messed up.
And at the end of the year, getting tired of not seeing this, they created what they deemed the Filthy 15. This big list to say, hey, look, these are still out there everywhere, and these are the 15 worst songs. I'm assuming of right then. They are very of the time. There's a bit of time gaps in some of these, and they appear to be ranked, which I found very interesting. These group of ladies sat around and made effectively a list of what they determined to be the 15 worst songs
How did they even
available.
find them?
I have no clue. I can guarantee you, because we'll run down through the 15. This is not what they were listening to, and some of these were not in any way on the radio.
Maybe it's like akin to nowadays, like angry, like parents being like, "Don't let my kid read this book" or whatever.
I mean, more or less,
Maybe it's
yes.
like that. They heard from angry.
Oh,
moms.
for sure, yeah. Oh, we'll get into some of the angry moms approaching them later on. Let's run through these real quick, so you have an idea of what they would deem as the 15, and also highlight some things that bring up an issue you brought up earlier of who gets that say, right? Like, when is it too bad, when is it too good? Because there are some absolutely questionable things on here that already, show that maybe their idea of what's awful is debatable.
It's skewed.
Yeah, but we'll start with number 15, Cyndi Lauper, She Bop. A ode to female masturbation that is, as the kids would describe today, a bop. Great song. I will give it the shadow of the doubt on this one. If you don't know what she is talking about, it is a song about dancing.
Yeah. It's very subtle.
That is going to fly over every 7-year-old's head, and nothing that
Right.
the mom may need to worry about now. That said, still, it is questionable content.
It's technically about masturbation,
Yeah.
but I say female masturbation is acceptable, cooler than male masturbation.
As this list goes on, we will see that that's probably actually the opposite of what they're thinking, as there seems to be a bias against women.
Shocking.
Number 14, as I said, like, where did they find this? Venom, the track Possessed, that they deemed as being a cult.
Well,
it is. I'm not gonna lie to you. It is definitely like a cult themed. It's about possession by Satan. That said, it's not popular. It's not something they were probably hearing on the radio. And if their goal is to just have a big O on the album cover that warns of occultism, I think Venom's logo being a pentagram is probably gonna with a horned
beast,
goat.
Yeah.
Yeah, making up the pentagram is
The
probably
horns
enough.
man.
Yeah.
And also, banger of a track.
Also,
Another
another
bop.
very good. 13, band I had not heard of before this list, let alone hearing the song, Mary Jane Girls in My House. So another one, they deemed it was bad because of sex. I would say, again, it's, I don't know, subtle enough where the average listener probably just, it's like, come on over to my house, my house, and
right. It's like you know, like what they're gonna do, but is your 8-year-old
it's not explicit.
Gonna know, yeah.
Number 12, Black Sabbath post Dio album when they had the guy from Deep Purple singing for them, a track called "Trashed," about getting trashed and driving a car and wrecking, barely surviving, and swearing to never drink and drive again.
Right, we talked about this.
Yeah,
and it's honestly, it's a good moral tale.
Well, they said drug and alcohol use. Throw that warning label on there.
Well, it is, but it tells about the dangers of drinking and driving.
Yeah, and the dangers of your third vocalist. Number 11, Merciful Fate Into the Coven, another album the second occult by a band that I think once again I don't know. I don't know if an occult sticker is going to need to be warned. You know,
Yeah.
just look at the album cover.
Yeah. Another demon-y figure on the cover.
But again, I think they were trying to go beyond just putting a warning label. I think they wanted to just go away.
Well, like
in general.
you said, at this time is Satanic Panic, and so of course they're going to want to kind of prey on that fear. So I get it.
Number 10, Def Leppard's High and Dry, parentheses, Saturday Night, labeled for drug and alcohol use.
Shocking.
Sure. This is like the most bold, like just basic, it's Saturday night, I want to drink. Like, it does, unlike the Black Sabbath one about, going out drunk, like, I think he says the song he has like a bottle of tequilas, he's driving around going 100 miles per hour. There's none of that in the Def Leppard song. It's 50% of rock and roll.
Higher.
And it is higher on the list.
Would you swap them?
Personally? Probably. Yeah, I think the Def Leppard song is so nothing. It doesn't even make sense. It's actually a bad example on this list. There's probably much worse stuff by some of the bands who are already on this list.
Yeah.
Number 9 is a track that I think should probably higher up based on what they are warning about. The band Wasp with the song Animal, parentheses, Fuck Like a Beast.
I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, they've specifically flagged that one for sex, language, and violence. I don't know. Title says it all on that one. Sure, slap a warning sticker on that.
Did it get radio play?
Probably not. I don't think you can't say that on the radio, so they wouldn't have gotten play.
Oh, that's something maybe to dig into as well. Of like, how they bleep things?
Yeah.
I'm curious how that ties in. Because I'm sure it does.
When that started?
Yeah. I'm sure it ties in.
So I mentioned earlier one of them, specifically Susan Baker, mentioned Like a Virgin by Madonna as the song that got her into this whole thing. Madonna is on this list, number 8, with Dress You Up, which is labeled as containing references to sex. Now, the thing with Dress You Up is it is way milder than Like a Virgin, and it's on the exact same album.
Yeah,
very strange
what I was
choice.
Thinking. And Like a Virgin is so popular.
Yeah.
So you would think you'd want to put that on the list.
Very strange. Number 7, and now this is like the most like something about Twisted Sister clearly really upset them.
Yay.
Number 7, We're Not Gonna Take It. They said it is violent. I think this is just a mom afraid of her child rebelling against them.
And they're in drag.
Yeah, there's like nothing about this song. It's not really violent. It's barely angry.
It's what do you call that? Disobedience.
Disobedience. It's funny that they're afraid of that.
It's anarchy.
Yeah. Number 6, the not so subtle AC/DC track "Let Me Put My Love Into You," which I said is about sex.
No.
Which isn't every AC/DC song.
Maybe it's about projecting your feelings and your heart into the other person.
You bring up a good point there. We'll get to it a little bit later, but a lot of music is up to interpretation. And if you're hunting out bad stuff, you're going to find bad stuff. Hence, Twisted Sister a second ago. But maybe the interpretation is 100% correct on Motley Crue's Bastard, Violence and Language.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's Motley Crue.
Yeah.
They're probably a poster child of things
I wonder if this is even close to their worst song.
No, probably not even the worst on that album.
So it's not even one of those horny songs.
It's not even a single, which is actually kind of a common thread in a lot of these songs. Is they're not very well known singles off of some albums that are absolutely like massive. It's a very strange choice. Number 4, we have Vanity. Strap on, Robbie baby.
Oh my god!
By far the worst song on the list by a mile. Vanity is the solo project of Vanity, originally of Vanity 6, a Prince girl group. It's a terrible song. And yeah, as I said, it does contain sexual references.
It's so bad that I was confused also because why would you tell your boyfriend to strap on? Like, I'm not familiar with that lingo except when it is with like obviously sexual tendencies. But yeah, so I didn't really understand exactly what she was trying to say. Obviously, she wanted to have sex with her
Slightly
boyfriend.
more interesting to that, it's not actually written by Vanity. It is written by her boyfriend, Robbie.
Yeah, which is cringe. Like, he wrote a song about how hot he is and how much he wants to fuck himself, basically.
Yeah. If you listen to it, I think that is what he wrote.
And horrible production. Her vocals
It's
are
awful.
horrible.
Just all around
The
bad.
music is bad. It's just not a good song.
Judas Priest's "Eat Me Alive," number 3, for sex and violence.
Gay.
Yeah.
Again.
Now they didn't know that at the time about Judas Priest.
But he is.
And I think there was some slander earlier by you against Twisted Sister.
No,
I think
not
they just
at
don't
all.
like the drag element, but I don't think they are gay, unlike the singer of Judas
Oh,
Priest.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that. I apologize.
Yeah, Eat Me Alive, sure, whatever. It's sexual and violent. He says Eat Me Alive like 300 times in the song.
A lot.
Understanding much beyond that's kind of difficult. I don't know.
They just hate
I think
him
they hate
because-
metal.
Yeah, because it's metal. He's a gay man, a gay
Yeah.
leather daddy. They don't want that, which is not correct. The correct way is to encourage that.
Number 2, Sheena Easton, track Sugar Walls. They highlighted for sex. It's pretty bad. Also, again, similar to the Vanity one, this song features 2 artists on it, Sheena Easton and Prince. Written by Prince. Most instruments are performed by Prince, and he does backing vocals. And you'll never guess who our number 1 artist is as well then. Also Prince, Darling Nikki, for sex and masturbation.
Wait, you didn't go back to talk about sugar walls. What are the sugar walls, Brian?
Oh, it's her vagina.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's her sticky vagina.
Yeah.
And the Prince, Darling Nikki, that one was certainly explicit.
Yes.
I kind of understand the moms on that one. I will agree with them. I wouldn't necessarily want my child to listen to a song about a prostitute. I don't even know what. It was a lot of masturbating and a hot prostitute. What more can you say?
Devil's advocate against them, it is the soundtrack to an R-rated movie.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Is it a musical? I've never seen
I would say,
Purple
I would
Rain.
describe it as a musical.
Okay. So him singing about Darling Nikki is a scene in the movie where he's masturbating watching.
She's
dancing.
masturbating.
She's
Yeah,
masturbating.
listen to the song again. Yeah. See, it's female. See? That's why it's number 1.
They don't like the girls.
So yeah, as I said, that the hope here was to create bigger public outrage. Look at all these awful songs your children might be listening to. We need to take action. And with this list, they presented it out there, and some of these artists were quite surprised. The guy in Venom was like, he thought it was a prank. He's like, what do you mean we're getting like tagged by people from Congress? Like, who, us?
Yeah, right.
Like, who
Us
are
with,
they?
With a total of 1,000 fans.
Yeah. So for some artists, draw some attention. Some thought it was quite negative attention. Some of the pop artists especially were very concerned that it was going to
Right.
tank their career.
Yeah.
And so that led us to September 19th of 1986, when the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee agreed to have a hearing on this. The interesting thing about this is at this point, the RCAA had already agreed to put the sticker on the unified sticker on the label. So this Senate meeting was kind of a last-ditch effort by the musicians to be like, whoa, you're censoring us without any real say. And we'll get into kind of both sides of the arguments here. First, we'll start with the pro side. Paula Hawkins printed 3 album covers, specifically Pyromania by Def Leppard, Wow by Wendy O. Williams, and Wasp by Wasp.
Wasp!
Yes, to show kind of the horrors that are out there. Which, again, I must reiterate, if the album cover is the problem, putting a sticker on the album cover does nothing. Because it's already showing it to you.
See it.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what they have against Def Leppard.
I'm
The Pyromania
looking at
album cover
these-
is
yeah.
just like a building blowing up.
It's literally a building in crosshairs on fire. So I guess they're trying to say it's violent.
Yeah.
But It's a drawing,
Yeah,
and
it's
also
pretty,
if you shoot a building, it's not gonna light on fire.
Yeah, it's not. There's probably better examples out there they could have picked for violence, but Def Leppard's big, so I mean that's the other side of it is, go after the large fish in this case.
And the Wendy Williams one, honestly, I hate the parents for this. This is a great album cover.
It's very metal.
Just like she has a wife beater on. She's got kind of this like chainmail underwear situation. She's got a whip, and there's fire in the background. She looks very powerful. I like this album cover, honestly, and I don't understand what's wrong with it. I guess because it's a half naked woman and there's fire. They don't like fire.
It's satanic.
Let's see Wasp really quick.
Oh, this is a great one. I love the Wasp album cover.
Oh, wow.
Again, we got our violence. We have some sort of skeleton on what appears to be a rack in the background. The band members are kind of like hunched around rocks.
And bones.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not super clear where this is supposed to be. If it's some sort of like
and there's like a
torture chamber or something.
In the background, some torches, and yeah, they're like screaming. They're all like screaming like yeah. But
Paula Hawkins also presented 2 music videos that she found super objectable and would like removed from television. Those being "Hot for Teacher" by Van Halen,
yeah.
which I don't know.
Okay. If we're talking about the children, yeah, like they clearly don't want their children to be horny for their teachers because that's an issue.
Yeah, and "We're Not Gonna Take It" by Twisted Sister.
That one also doesn't that music video have to do with school?
No, it's at home. It's like in the house, and they're like I mean, this is the pure rebellion against the parents.
Oh.
Is the kids getting like
I think I'm thinking of Alice
locked
Cooper
in his room.
I mix Alice Cooper and Twisted Sister up all the time, which is not right. I understand.
Yeah, and Paula Hawkins said that much has changed since Elvis's seemingly innocent times. Subtleties, suggestions, and innuendo have given way to overt expressions and descriptions of often violent sexual acts, drug-taking, and flirtations with the occult.
Ooh.
The record album covers, to me, are self-explanatory. Now, I'd like to point out that Elvis, when he first showed up on the scene...
Too horny.
Couldn't even be shown from the waist down on television.
He was gyrating way too much. The girlies lost their shit. The girlies really lost their shit, and they got horny, and that's what changed America. He
Probably
allowed
changed
women to be
Paula
sexual.
Hawkins.
Yeah.
But now, the new generation's going through the same thing. Can't have it. Pull that ladder up.
Every generation, it's the same.
They also brought out a Dr. Joe Stussy, a music professor at the University of Texas, San Antonio, who spoke in regards to the power of music to influence behavior. He argued that heavy metal was different from earlier forms of music, such as jazz and rock and roll, because it was, quote, church music.
What?
And had as one of its central elements the element of hatred.
So he's claiming that metal is basically satanic church music?
No, he's saying previous music was church music.
Oh.
Jazz and, what he's calling rock and roll of
yeah.
the 50s and 60s.
Right.
That's church music. It's grown from church music. Current pop and metal is not from the church.
Hatred.
And therefore, it has to come from somewhere else. It says has to have at least one element of hatred.
Wow. That's
Different
so
times.
bizarre.
On the pro side, we had 3 musicians. First, we'll start with Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa came in swinging maybe a little hot.
As he does.
As he was known to do. He said that the community was, quote, a bunch of bored Washington housewives.
Honestly, was he wrong?
No,
he wrong?
I honestly think he was correct. He then proceeded to recite the First Amendment and denounced the proposed music warnings as, quote, the equivalent of treating dandruff by decapitation and an ill-conceived piece of nonsense that infringed on the civil liberties and invited litigation.
Wow.
Frank took some pop shots at some of the members of the BMRZ, including Tipper Gore. Some of the senators were a little expectant of then Senator Al Gore to stand up for her. She did not. Instead, Washington Senator Slade Gorton came ahead and said, all right, I'll stand up for Tipper Gore since his wife won't, or her husband won't. I can only say that I found your statement to be boorish, incredibly and insensitively insulting to the people who were here previously. That you can manage to give the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States a bad name if I felt that you had the slightest understanding of it, which I do not. Fun fact, Slade Gordon of Washington had some fun nicknames. He was often referred to as Slade the Blade.
Wow.
He's quite sharp. As well as Skeletor. If you're wondering why he has that nickname, just go ahead and pull up a picture of him.
I'm looking.
Yeah, as I said, the Gordon, he suddenly went after Zappa because he felt that he was going too much towards Tipper Gore, and since he felt like that Al wasn't doing anything, he had to step in to defend her, which I find very funny.
He's definitely Skeletor-ish. Like, he definitely has prominent bone structure.
Yeah, very skeleton-like skull head shape.
I think that Zappa was based, as the kids use these days, he was based on his statement. Because he's right, you know? When does it end? And also you're impeding on expression.
Yeah, and I think Zappa was right to some extent about saying, like, where does it end and what are they going to do? He would release an album, I believe, called Hurricane of Shit, that they would slap a parental advisory sticker on, notably fully instrumental album.
Are you serious?
So it was purely for the name of the album that they put a sticker on there. Second, we have one of the targeted artists from earlier, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister.
Probably not gay.
Definitely not gay. Known for his kind of over-the-top look, bordering almost like a drag queen. He was expected, to show up. They expected kind of a buffoon, but he actually showed up quite cleanly dressed and really made a name for himself there as being very articulate and intelligent. His main points, he was afraid that this was not really designed to inform parents, more to segregate records. His fear was that it was up to the discretion of whoever to determine what is and is not explicit, and that would lead to, any like free thinkers being cast out.
Yeah, he's got a point because also I think oftentimes the parent isn't necessarily buying the records for the kid.
Yeah.
The kid is buying the records. By the time they get home, they've ripped off the plastic. It doesn't even have the parental advisory sticker anyways. So what really is the point except to target and silence these people?
Yeah, and I mean, he was effectively right. After it would come out, a lot of big box stores, including things like Walmart, would just not carry anything that had a parental advisory sticker on it. He used his own song as an example of this. Under the Knife, he said that Tipper had said that it was about sadism. He instructed that it was actually not. It was about surgery.
Literal?
Yeah, it was very literal. His point being, really, it's up to the interpretation of the listener. And here they were saying it was bad, but that's not what it was about. So, you ask 5 different people what it's about, you might get 5 different answers.
Right.
And finally, we had a bit of a dark horse musician come in. One John Denver.
John Denver!
That's right, John Denver. Country Roads Take Me Home himself came in. The pro side was quite excited. They expected John Denver to come in, sit down, and side with them.
Right.
He did not.
Yeah, because he's very, chill, and they probably listen to John Denver.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's probably their poster child of what they want to have non-explicit music. And he came in and was very much against them. He explicitly cited his own Rocky Mountain High, which when it came out was removed from radio stations because they said it promoted drug use.
Oh.
And he was like, I don't want that happening. He actually, in his testimony on the stand, compared this to Nazi book burning.
Yeah. I mean, it's very disheartening, I think, as artists to both have your music misinterpreted and also silenced or put this label on it that you don't want.
Yeah.
Because every piece of music is a part of that person. So
Exactly.
I can see this being a very personal issue.
Very much so. Though, if you're listening to this, as I said at the top, you've probably seen that sticker.
Oh, yeah.
Which means the PMRC won.
Right.
Or did they? As the 90s ushered in, a new kind of music really took over that would have absolutely blown their minds in the 80s if that's what they were afraid of.
Yeah.
And that was hip hop.
Yeah.
Specifically, kind of like the gangster rap of the 90s. And a lot of musicians out of that scene felt that the sticker actually helped identify this is the good music.
Right, yeah.
And it's sort of a new trend kind of popped out where you talk to people in like the metal or the rock scene that, hey, if it has that parental advisory sticker on there, that lets the kids and teens know that's the good album they don't want you to like hear.
I remember as a teen and as a kid feeling that way. Of like, that's adult music. It's cool to listen to that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the effect they had. I'll leave you with a cover Ice-T here from his track Fruit in Speech. Hey, PMRC, you stupid fucking assholes. That sticker on the record is what makes them sell gold. Can't you see, you alcoholic idiots? The more you try to suppress us, the larger we get.
Do you remember, like, growing up, and maybe even now, seeing, like, clothing that would have that on it?
Yeah.
That would have
just
that
to have the parental advisor, yeah.
Yeah, like on a hat or on a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was, like, a big part of our culture, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. Like, it definitely... I think it failed. Because there was because it was just like a sticker chucked on there, but there was no actual enforcement, really, of any variety. There was no... legal repercussions. Like, you can't sell it to a minor or something.
Right.
Though not all artists felt that they benefited from this. Joanne McDuffie felt that being on the top 15 kept her out of the Grammys, though. I don't know. It didn't seem to impact Madonna or Prince too negatively.
Who?
Joanne McDuffie. I believe she's from the Mary Jane Boys.
Oh, Mary Jane Girls.
Girls, sorry, yes.
Which it probably isn't a weed reference.
Yeah. Finally, I'll leave you with a quote that I found just absolutely hilarious from Suzanne Baker talking about after all this went down. She talks about often when she's traveling, sometimes somebody will come up and they find out who I am. They'll say, "We really thank you for doing that. Thank you for making us more aware."
Okay, yeah, that totally happens.
Going back a couple years for this next song, the actual event may take place then and slightly in the future of the actual song itself. We're going to be looking at The Replacements' Johnny's Gonna Die off their debut. Sorry, Ma, I forgot to take out the trash.
Johnny always takes more than he needs. Knows a couple chords, knows a couple leads. Johnny always needs more than he takes. Forgets a couple chords, forgets a couple breaks. And everybody tells me that Johnny is hot. Johnny needs something what he ain't got. And Johnny's gonna die. Johnny's gonna die. Johnny's gonna die.
And Johnny's Gonna Die off of The Replacements' debut. Sorry, Ma, I forgot to take out the trash. 1981. A pretty straightforward song. Definitely slower than most other songs on their debut album. Probably tied to the fact that it is about somebody dying.
Yeah.
Johnny, very common character in songs. Lots of stuff out of the 50s and 60s of dying teenagers named Johnny.
Yeah.
This is not a dying teenager named Johnny. This is an actual real person. This is one Johnny Thunders.
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard this song a lot. And I never knew that it was about Johnny Thunders until right now.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, Johnny Thunders was the guitarist for the New York Dolls, who then had varying degrees of success as kind of a solo artist and other kind of spin-off bands after that. Yeah, so this actually, as I said, is about Johnny Thunders, and came out of him coming to Minnesota, where the Replacements are from. Paul Westerberg, the primary songwriter and singer of the Replacements, was hoping the Replacements, would open for Johnny
Yeah.
Thunders when he came to town. They did not get that nod. That instead went to their local rivals, Husker Du.
Oh.
Nonetheless, Paul still
Wow.
went to the show, and well, it doesn't take much of a rocket scientist to think what he thought of Johnny's performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, very simple. It wasn't exactly Johnny Thunders. It was a band at the time called Gang War with Wayne Kramer. And if you're
Oh.
wondering what that sounds like, it sounds a little bit something like this. A little raucous. It should probably come as no surprise. Johnny Thunders had a bit of a drug problem.
No.
Yeah, and the state he was in throughout much of this tour, and maybe most of his life, was one of, either he's doing okay
In
on
and out,
stage
yeah.
or not really there.
Yeah.
And as Paul went back home after that show, I thought, wow, glad I saw him now, because I
Yeah.
probably won't get to again.
That's incredible, and it really shows, like, in the lyrics too.
Yeah.
Like I just feel so dumbfounded because it's so clear and obvious.
Yeah, and he's in the, right off the bat, Johnny always knows what he needs, knows a couple chords, knows a couple leads.
Yeah.
Talking about a guitarist.
Yeah.
Always needs more than he takes, forgets a couple chords, forgets a couple breaks.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's him watching him live and being like, damn,
Yeah.
bro's missing a couple.
He's
He's
struggling a little bit up there.
And I guess you should also mention that obviously New York Dolls, incredibly prolific and influential on
Very
a lot
influential.
of punk bands. So it makes a lot of sense that Paul would be so excited and infatuated with Johnny Thunders coming, and then obviously being just shocked.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, he eventually went and saw one of his idols,
Yeah.
and his idol was
Strung out.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well, contrary to Paul's thought, Johnny would live a tiny bit longer. He would live for about 10 more years and would die in 1991.
Wow.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's pretty good.
A, quote, drug-related incident.
Wow.
Though Thunders, to his own credit, was working pretty much up until the day he died. He actually, 36 hours before his own death, had been recording a cover of one of his own songs with a German band called Die Toten Hosen. They're doing a cover of Born to Lose.
Born to Lose.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, and Thunders would die in Louisiana.
Okay.
A neighbor would find him a few days later.
Yeah.
And see him get carted out, and he would tell the paper, like, "Oh yeah, I found him in there. He was clutching onto his guitar, died a rock star." And he's like, later would say, "Yeah, that was a total lie.
What
He
a
was
legend.
so rigor mortis. He described it as being sort of like a crescent moon shape.
Oh.
Came out on the stretcher. The bag was shaped like that."
Wow. Fetal position.
Yeah, but what if I told you some people don't think he died of a drug overdose?
They don't think he died, or they just don't think he died.
Oh,
of
and I don't think anybody thinks he didn't die. Everyone I
okay.
found seems to suggest that he's dead. But some people
Right.
say he did not die from the drugs. Or at least
Okay.
not from taking the drugs.
What?
One very reliable source claims not long before this, Johnny Thunders came into possession of quite a bit of methadone.
Yeah.
Used to,
As one
ward
does.
off his heroin addiction.
Right. Yeah.
Now, being in a seedy part of Louisiana, some drug dealers got word of that. Like, hey, this guy's got a bunch of methadone. We're going to go take that. And allegedly, the dealers came in, loaded him full of LSD, stole his methadone, and then proceeded to murder him.
Wouldn't they, like,
Would-
wouldn't there be
yes,
evidence of that?
Probably. But you know what? Our reliable sources on that? D.D. Ramone.
Oh, yes. Okay. I understand. That I believe him.
Yeah, D.D. Ramone, famously writer of Chinese Rocks, which is kind of a big hit for Johnny Thunders' solo time period. Also quite a good cover by the Ramones themselves.
And isn't he the one that had the rap career?
He did also have a rap career that he started in rehab.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's very trustworthy and clearly knows his stuff.
Some of his close family members say that Jonathan was actually hiding a leukemia diagnosis as
Okay.
well, and that he
Yeah.
eventually succumbed to that, and that the local police, just busy to get rid of this problem of a dead rock star, said drugs check done.
Oh, like they didn't properly.
They didn't do anything. Yeah, they say that his
Oh.
toxicology report suggests he didn't have anywhere near enough drugs in the system to actually have killed him. Is that
Yeah.
true?
But
Who
do
knows?
You, but do you die so suddenly of that? Don't you get really sick?
Well, he apparently had a fear of doctors and
Yeah, but he
had
would
no
have been,
treatment.
He was. You just said he was recording, right? 36 hours before. Don't you think Die Hootin' Torton would have been like, bro was really sick and looked deathly?
Well, if you ask Paul Westerberg back in 1981,
That was sad.
he was deathly ill.
That's because he was on drugs.
Well, maybe it was hard to tell. Either way, this is a prophetic song.
Yeah.
It's both a true story and kind of a fascinating snapshot of something different.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that while technically prophetic, I would say that it's a little iffy.
Iffy?
You know? Because I could say Brian's gonna die. He is gonna die eventually.
You don't know that for 100% fact.
But, like, that doesn't make me a prophet.
Maybe. Put it in music and then we'll see what they say about you. For our third and final historical piece today, we're going back even further musically to 1971, to a story that goes back even farther than that, 1884.
Wow.
For our final track, a bit of Canadian history, a track called Louis Riel by WIllie Dunn.
In 1884, half-breed horseman knocking at the back door. Louis, Louis, you're wanted by the people are hungry, people need food. Down the traders and the buffalo skinner, they send them back from where they came and bring the good days back again right now. Send them back and find a right now. There's a half-breed scout and a fire-pot can, then on the basketball big bear, where he urged and he begged them. He told them there he was, laying on the wisdom, the people are hungry, they just stand a dying now. Well, the priests are upset and the Yankees up and angry, letters are flying from each seat to water wall. Better stop the man no matter what the cost is. Louis Riel is putting down the system, defeated, parole in the jailhouse now. Old Middleton's left the Fish Creek fight. They're running like the devil from the half-breed mine, beaten by the breeze who left the lost. Showed up later at the town of Batasha with the Gatling guns. They're ripping up the ground and the half-breed puller shaking up the sky. It sure is a good day to stand to die right now against depression, and we're fighting right now.
All right, full disclosure, I am not Canadian.
What?
I am not very well versed in Canadian history. I don't speak French either, and there is a fair amount in this that is written in French. I mean, his name alone, Louis Riel. That's probably the correct pronunciation, is what he says in the song.
Yeah, right.
I had not heard of this man before hearing this song. To be fair, I hadn't really even heard of like WIllie Dunn until more recently.
Probably 5 years. Or
Canadian folk musician. A lot of songs about the First Nations people, or in this case, the Métis people. I had not heard that term before either.
Yeah.
It refers to like a mixed race person, kind of native descent, with more often than not French.
Oh, okay.
And it would create in Canada kind of its own subgroup of people that weren't like the white settlers. Canada proper per se, but they also weren't necessarily the full-blown natives.
Native, right.
And it led to this sort of own streak of, community, kind of living more of like a native outside of the government kind of society. Like they weren't part of the
Canadian
Canadian, government system. And as it would creep across Canada, as so did as American manifest destiny creep to the West. The people living out in these areas, in this case, the Métis, were, getting taken advantage of.
Right.
And that's kind of where our story starts up. So Louis Riel was, born up there to a father of the exact same name, which I found very interesting. He's not a junior. They're both just named Louis Riel. So that made the beginning part of his life kind of confusing to read about. But he'd go off, he'd go to school, he'd get educated, and then when he would return home at about 18, he found that kind of the happy, joyous life they remembered wasn't really existing anymore. The West had creeped in, and there's a lot of tension. And it had every ounce of things that creates tension physically possible. You had the people who were already living there, and the Red River settlement, the Métis people, who were of a French-speaking, native mixed ancestry, who were Catholics, against these new incoming English-speaking Protestant Canadians.
Right.
And they had quite different ideas of what to do with the land and how to live there and kind of rules. And it just led to kind of just a giant clash of heads that eventually led to effectively this Red River uprising.
Okay.
And Louis Riel would just kind of fall in place as the de facto leader of that. As they would sort of rise up and demand recognition from the brand new Canadian government, freshly free-ish from the United Kingdom.
Was he a leader in the community already, or
I think he gave her money.
Oh.
I think because he talked about going to school off kind of places, go visit the United States and things like that.
Oh, okay.
But he's one of them, right? So he's kind of a powerful, wealthy version of them. When he comes back and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, I can't stand for this." He just sort of stands up and says, "We got to do something."
Right.
He seems to have a quite a bit of charisma. It seems very charismatic. He's able to rally people quite well. And it ends up leading to, kind of rebellion. Effectively, they start up occupying forts, pushing out the Canadian advancements, while at the same time, interestingly, doing a lot of actual diplomacy with the Canadian government of these are our demands. Please match them. Please respect what we want. And all this kind of goes on back and forth for a long time. And then as it's starting to wind down, Riel captures a group of Canadian loyalists who are sort of spying or something. And he brings them in, and he decides one of them is just being a butt, to put it bluntly. And he's like, "You guys are spying on us. We have to set an example." And Louis kills one of them.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and it ends up, rippling back and "Oh, yo, he killed a Canadian." At the end of the day, he sort of gets away with it, but it will come back to haunt him greatly later on. But the Red River kind of wins, effectively, and the area gets recognition from the Canadian government. Effectively becomes Manitoba.
Okay.
Louis Riel is actually pointed out as kind of the father of Manitoba. And they're like, "All right, you guys can have representation in our new Congress." And actually, Louis Riel is voted into one of the parliament's seats, one of the he eventually representative. Problem is, he's wanted for murder.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, "I'll do it." And they're like, "You come in, and we're gonna kill you." And he's like, "All right, just kidding. I'm gonna not come there." And he goes to America.
Okay.
And there, Louis hangs out for quite a while. Until, as you may have heard in the song, 1884,
Right.
Things are going bad again for the Métis people. They've moved kind of more west. Again, this is always how they're kind of driven up and away. And
out of the state that they basically created.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't just in what was there, but yes, I mean, they were in the surrounding areas. And this kind of legend of this guy, this mythical figure had already started. And there's a new area that's having problems. Effectively, again, the exact same thing.
Oh.
Tales, same in the West. The native people living off the land are having a lot of problems because all the buffalo are dead.
Right.
As the song says, "Down with the traders and the buffalo skinners, send them back to where they came." The Canadians have moved in again and are now forcing everybody to effectively turn to agriculture.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, I don't really.
Overhunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they reach out to Louis, who has now been living in America. And they're like, can you please come up and save us? You saved our people in the past. Can you come do it again? And he's like, all right. You don't need to twist my arm. And so he does. And he shows up and ends up starting what's effectively called the Northwest Rebellion. Here's that, Northwestern Canada rebelling against Canada again. They're like, hey, you guys didn't really support us very well last time. I don't trust they're going to do it this time. We want these demands met. Like, please give us some land, some general support.
Cows.
Yeah, stop killing all the buffalo. Can you promise you won't steal our land?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. He's like, all right, well, last time we turned to armed rebellions, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Some people don't necessarily agree with it, but again, he's very charismatic. He has a lot of people behind him, especially the Métis people, or Métis, something. It's French. I'm not great with it.
Yeah.
Though, interestingly, the actual First Nations leaders in the area aren't too keen on his arming rebellion and don't really agree with that. But he gives it a shot, and it kind of completely fails. Okay. It doesn't last very long, and he ends up getting captured and taken to Ottawa, I believe, where they then have a trial, and they determine him guilty of treason.
Right.
Of a jury, not at all of his peers. It was exclusively like the Canadian side. Yeah. A lot of people are like, that is extremely unjust.
Yeah.
And they there's a really good quote where one guy says that he was tried for treason and then we went and hung him for murder. Like that murder he'd committed 20 years ago was still fresh in the mind of all of them. That wasn't what he was there for, but that's what they ended up doing. And they ended up hanging him.
That's kind of messed up.
Yeah. It's an interesting read. I mean, I never heard of this guy, and yet he has a very similar story to we hear of a lot of kind of American folk heroes. And that's kind of the role he's taken on in Canada as well. This guy shows up, helps kind of the it's very easy party to like pictures kind of the downtrodden, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, helped them once, came back from retirement, Rocky II'd it and tried to do it again. And to some extent got some success. The government's like, sure. The second time too, the government's like, yeah, we'll resurvey your land. All right, it's probably yours. You should probably have it. Oh. And then they scooped it up, and prospectors just took it all and sold it for a bunch of money, and they got forced off their land, and they didn't end up getting the things they were promised by the government. And there's a whole thing with like Canada and.
Sounds familiar.
They funded schools based on your religion, and since the Métis were a different religion than the mainstream government, they ended up getting poor schools, and they weren't allowed to speak French. And then they were forced to live in shanty towns.
Oh my god.
It's not good.
So not so far off of the United States treatment of natives.
But it's an interesting one. Like, he's apparently like very well researched because of this. There's some other sides to this that I hadn't really talked about yet. When he was 14 in school, he kind of had a mental breakdown where his dad had died. Like he was clearly had something already going wrong with his brain, and his dad had died. And they're like, "Hey, you need to come back because you're now like the head of your household."
Right, because he had like a wealthy family.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I can't come back, for that is not my father. I am a Jewish boy."
Oh.
And they're like, what? That's not right. And he's like, no, my name is something totally different. And he convinced himself that he was a totally different person.
Wow.
But he eventually kind of seemed to have snapped out of it because he did go back home and help them. There was a lot of reports when he came back for the second battle, the stress was starting to get to him quite strongly. And he was telling kind of weird prophetic tales about how the Pope was going to die and a local bishop was going to be crowned the Pope. and it was pushing off, some more fringe elements of it. Of like, this guy's
Weird.
getting out there. And his actual
Yeah.
trial there, where they convicted him to hang, that was his defense. Was that they wanted him to plead insanity at first. He was like, "No, I'm not crazy." And he's like, "All right, maybe."
Maybe
And it didn't work, but it's a very interesting one. But yeah, it just goes to show you, we have like a lot of big like folk in the U.S., right? Like you think of like the Dylans and the Joan Baez's who write songs, or Woody Guthrie's.
Woody Guthrie.
We have all these, but then you just step aside anywhere else. They have those too, and they're fantastic, like this. And it can just totally open up this whole new window to issues and historical events.
Willie Dunn especially, like a lot of his music is seemingly based on like folklore or even like true events that have happened. And he's so good. He's amazing at both songwriting and the structure of the songs themselves are just really incredible. And it's kind of disappointing that he's not really talked about or praised much. And I think that he's definitely rivals like your Woody Guthrie's and Bob Dylan's for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, in addition to like the history ones, there are some like fantastic kind of just nature shots. Like a 10-minute epic about like the Pacific Ocean. It's very like Woody Guthrie-esque, singing about the Columbia and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a beautiful voice. Really beautiful voice.
Also, the credit is having the first Canadian music video.
That's right. Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Also, I saw Louis Riel in like 2011 was voted like the 11th most famous, like most important Canadian.
Whoa.
Yeah. They had him on stamps and stuff there. And again, just doesn't permeate South at all. I can't remember one single fact about Canada from school here in the United States.
Celine Dion, isn't it?
I don't think they taught us that in school.
Taught me that. Titanic.
They showed you the Titanic in school?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that sounds about right. All right, well, that was our trip through 3 different pieces of history today. We looked at the parental advisory sticker on the front of everybody's favorite records. We looked at Johnny Thunders and his apparently horrendous gang war performance in Minnesota in 1980.
I wonder how Husker Du was.
Well, I mean, they didn't write a song about how Bob Mould was going to die, so they must have done a little bit better. And then Louis Riel fighting for the people against oppression.
A little Robin Hood moment.
Kind of Robin Hood-esque. Robin Hood with extra side of religion.
Yeah, and really against the government.
Literally against the government, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a grab bag of stories. Obviously, they are very different. There's still death and murder.
Less murder. It wasn't 3 for 3 this time.
I don't know about that. You could say the American government murdered creativity and expression. So there's that. That could be your 3 for 3 then.
3 for 3. That's stretching it, but sure, if you want to go that direction, we can. All right, until next time, this has been Tapes You Leave Behind.
Bye-bye.
I knew a girl named Nikki, I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with a magazine. She said, how'd you like to waste some time? And I could not resist when I saw little Nikki grind.